So I've been here at MPI for, this is my 19th year coming up. I've been teaching college since 1990, where I teach intro to psych, abnormal psych, and child and adolescent development. And then I have an office right here as a therapist, here and over in Morin as well, so I've been a therapist since '92. So what I'm doing today, and why Tim's filming this, is when I was down at Newport Academy, they work with Jeffrey Schwartz, who's a professor down at UCLA, who has just done this groundbreaking work on obsessive compulsive disorder. And I met the guy who works at Newport as well, who works with Jeffrey Schwartz. Now, some of you know my background as a coach, that I was a swim coach for years, went to the Olympics in '92 as a coach, coached one of the greatest Olympic athletes who ever lived, named Matt Biondi, who won 11 Olympic medals. So I used to teach sports psychology in graduate school, and I wrote a book on sports psychology. But what I was telling this guy at Newport was that I've been using Jeffrey Schwartz's work in addiction for 8 years. And they don't use it as much. They use it more for obsessive compulsive disorder. So that's why we're filming this. That's why today's just going to be a little different with this. So we're not going to film any of you guys, and if you will, so when you don't introduce yourself. All right, and you can make up a name if you talk, but whatever. So if I ask you for feedback, just don't say your name, please. All right. So, and what I do with this is I've taken it, and you'll get it. So if you want to take notes, you can, but I will give you a handout that has all this information in it. So it's up to you whether you want to take notes, but you will get a handout at the end. But what I've done is we look at, intro to psych, abnormal psych, child and adolescent. In abnormal psychology, I talk a lot about obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, just not talking about addiction right now, but classic obsessive compulsive disorder. When we refer to obsessions, we're referring to thoughts. And these are often intrusive and unwanted thoughts. Okay? Those are thoughts. When we talk about compulsions, we talk about acts or actions to bring down the anxiety from the obsessive thought. So I'll tell you, before I do this lecture at school, this is what I say to my students. I walk in and I say, okay, before we get started today, I just want to tell you, I saw somebody drop their keys in the hallway out there. And I left them there because I don't want to, pick up somebody's keys. And you know how cars are now. You can just go and start. What do you think everybody starts doing when I say that?
Looking for their keys.
They start checking for their keys. And if they found their keys, they have no anxiety. I'm not worried about it. He's not talking about me. Okay? And the reason I do that is actually that did happen once. But when we say it's a disorder, this means it's completely out of control, and the person knows it's out of control. So with classic OCD, a person will have obsessive thoughts. One of the films I show in my class, they asked the girl, can you tell us about your obsessive thoughts? She said, yes, I have obsessive thoughts about germs. And I feel like if I touch a doorknob, I'll get germs and I'll get sick. And if I get sick, I can't go to school. And if I don't go to school, I don't get an education. And if I don't get an education, I don't get a job. And if I don't get a job, I'm going to be homeless. Therefore, if I touch a doorknob or shake your hand, I'm going to be homeless. Now that doesn't make sense, but that's how her obsessive thoughts go. The compulsive acts she has because of this, can you guess?
Wash your hands.
There it is. She washes her hands constantly, or she avoids touching doors. And if you go on YouTube and look under OCD, you'll see people who have different color skin from here to here because of scrubbing their hands so much. Maybe they use Comet. They may scrub their hands 20, 30, 40 times a day. And they know, I shouldn't be doing this, but I still feel I need to do it to reduce my anxiety level. Okay? Now, here at MPI, we've been here for 34 years. Betty Ford Treatment Center has been around for 37 years. Prior to that, there wasn't a lot of treatment. There was no treatment program for Elvis Presley to go to back in the 70s. There wasn't a treatment program. All right? So when addiction treatment started, it was seen as a branch of the OCD tree. Just like eating disorders are still seen today as a branch of the OCD tree. Obsessive thoughts in addiction. How much alcohol do I have? Where am I going to get it? When am I going to get it? Do I have enough to get me through the night? How much do I have? Which store am I going to go to? I've been to that one 3 times this week. I better go to a different one. If you're a pill person, how many pills do I have? Let me count them. That's the act. Let me count them. Let me count them again. Let me see. How much money do I have? When am I going to get this? When am I? And at the same time, knowing kind of like, what am I doing? This is crazy. I shouldn't be doing this. Now, who can talk about in their addiction, obsessions or compulsions in their addiction?
I'm a crack addict, and with crack, you could know how much crack you have. You could smoke through it all, know that you smoke through it all, and in spite of that, you're going to search the floor. You're going to scour every part of your apartment or wherever you're at, and any white crumb you're going to assume is crack, and you're going to keep doing it over and over and over.
Right, good. Anyone else back here?
Yes, I got hooked on Ativan. I would count how many Ativan I would have. Work it out.
Okay, thank you. Here.
I'm a crack addict also, and no matter what the consequences have been in the past of me losing things, I still obsess on smoking.
Yeah, right. How about people going liquor store to liquor store? Yeah, anybody want to talk about that? Go ahead.
Basically, you go and guys, we get to know your name,
Right,
the owners and all of that, so you'd be trying to switch it up, decide which days you're gonna go there, because then you know it's gonna be a different worker
Right.
there who's not gonna
right.
recognize you.
Go ahead here.
Just waking up on a morning, every morning, one morning after the other, saying to myself, today I'm not going to drink, only to find myself at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock with a drink in my hand and not necessarily even knowing how it got there, it's just there.
Right, exactly. Here.
Going to Safeway one day, then going to Lucky's another day,
Right,
then going to Lucky's in Hayward another day,
right.
and even if I ran out, I took a taxi.
Did you? Okay, here first.
Yeah, going to going to this store, liquor store, in the morning usually, just because, so I make sure once I got off work I'd have it.
Right,
And then going to the other liquor store that's clear, on the same street, but way down the street, to where they wouldn't know 2 days later that I was again buying a big huge bottle of vodka.
right.
And then the third one was usually at the end of the week at my hometown, actually.
Okay, here.
I'd be at the liquor store by 6 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
ask them to open up the door to the liquor cabinet or whatever. All my hidden bottles, I just knew there'd be some kind of liquor somewhere, and if there wasn't, I'd pour whatever was left from each bottle into one glass, hiding them, to the point where I would wrap, tissue paper, whatever I could, so they wouldn't clank going
Right.
to the garbage.
Right, okay, in the back?
I did the same thing with dealers that people do with liquor stores. I would my dealers care how much I'm using, but I would go to different dealers, so my dealers didn't know how much I was doing.
Right, okay, here.
So I was unaware that I was an alcoholic, and I noticed whenever I'd get off work after a couple of days, I would go to the same liquor store every time, but I thought it was cool because they liked it whenever I came there. They're always
Right.
happy to see me.
Right.
But I didn't realize it was just a normal thing that every time I got off work, I was going to the liquor store and then going home, so I didn't have to go later.
Right, right. So what I've done today, this originated, comes from a book, and that's by, the book is called Brain Lock, and this is the one, and like I said, I'll give you a handout that has all this on it. It's by Jeffrey Schwartz. He's a professor down at UCLA, and what he's shown is you can change your brain chemistry yourself by doing the things we're going to talk about today. And the thing that I think about, a couple things that's fascinating about this. Number one, it's a book on obsessive compulsive disorder, I think first published in 1998, and it's in its 54th or 56th printing already. That many printings, that many editions, that's 3 a year, 4 a year. on a book on obsessive compulsive disorder. The other thing is Jeffrey Schwartz is quoted everywhere. Daniel Amen, who does Change Your Brain, Change Your Life on Channel 9, he doesn't quote him by name, but he'll say, we know from the research at UCLA you can change your brain chemistry yourself. So what I've done is I've taken his 4-step process and I've applied it to chemical dependency. And so what I talk about here, I call this how to deal with cravings and urges to use and negative self-talk, okay? So in other words, we talk about this as like response prevention, like you're going to change how you do this. So it's a 4-step process. And the first step here he talks about is you relabel. How do you do this and when do you do this? All right? When you do this, weed's your drug. You're walking down the street. You smell weed. All right? The response is not, oh, where's that? Oh, somebody's got, that's Northern California. Somebody's got some good stuff. Who's doing? Okay, that's not the response. The response, the relabel, what you do, I talk about you develop an observing ego. All right? An observing ego. And what this is, you pull back emotionally and really take an overall look at the situation. All right? All right. Pull back emotionally and take an overall look at the situation. Now, between semesters, I'm here a lot more, and I have been for the past month. My semester started this week. All right. Here's what I've seen here. People, and what Schwartz talks about is that people's brain gets stuck. That so many people aren't able to pull back. They just get stuck in these thoughts. He's the person who consulted with Leonardo DiCaprio in the movie The Aviator, where he played Howard Hughes with obsessive compulsive disorder, which many of you saw. Leonardo DiCaprio had OCD traits for 3 to 4 months after filming that movie.
Wow.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right. Because he did that every day. The reality is, you've been in your addiction a lot longer than he filmed that movie. You're still going to have traits from your addiction that are going to last in your sobriety. And this is a plan. How do you deal with a craving? How do you deal with these urges to use? How do you deal when you're beating yourself up? And I'll get to that later as well. But the first step is, what you do is you notice. Sometimes this is called thinking about thinking. I notice I am. I notice, and so what you say to yourself, all right, you say to yourself, I don't want to use, I'm having a craving to use. I don't want to use, I'm having a craving to use. I don't want to use, I'm feeling a compulsive urge to use. I don't want to do this. I don't want to use, but I notice that I'm really beating myself up today. I'm really putting myself down today. I really feel terrible about myself. I don't want to do this, but I notice. All right? So that's why the term I use is observing ego. Schwartz will use either impartial spectator or a wise advocate, those kinds of words, whatever. But it's what it is you stop and you look of like what's going on here. And so many people just in this world are reactive and they don't notice kind of how they're feeling and what's going on. What he talks about is that, here's one of the huge things. It's so important to be patient with yourself for change. All right? So many people back when I was coaching would come in, make me great. I want to be great by tomorrow. All right? So many people in recovery, they want recovery like they got high. I want to hit the recovery pipe and I want to feel good tomorrow. All right? When I lecture on eating disorders, we talk about treatment for eating disorders is a 2 to 5 year process. 2 to 5 years. If you look at your treatment as 2 to 5 years instead of 28 days, 90 days, whatever, but if you're patient with yourself, change can happen. Change in how you think, change in what you think, change in how you feel about yourself, change in how you talk to yourself. So that is, that's the relabel. So like I said, the relabel is, I notice I'm having a craving. I notice this. I'm having a craving. And here's another one. I notice I want to walk out of here. I want to leave treatment. I notice that I'm obsessing about my work. I'm obsessing about my relationship. See, so many people get hung up on the phone. Is that, arguing with spouse, job, whoever, all right, kids, parents, you name it, and they don't stop and pull back and notice how they feel. Tell me some things, if you could. If someone's in a family session with Joyce, someone's in treatment, they're in a family session, give me some ammunition that they may get hit with from the family member. The family member is all upset. What are they going to say to this person?
They're gonna be negative.
So give me some sayings that they may say.
You stole from me, you lied.
You stole from me, you lied to me. What else?
I don't trust you.
I don't trust you.
You are
No I
selfish.
statements.
You're selfish.
No
Right.
I
What-
there's usually no I statements.
Right. And so you.
Right.
Right.
An embarrassment.
You're an embarrassment. Okay. And so here's the thing. Instead of me reacting and defending, like most people do, wow, I notice I get really anxious when I hear that. I notice I feel I need to defend myself when you say that. You see, that's why the saying, count to 10 before you lose your temper, is an old saying, because it's a good saying. I notice that I'm feeling I need to defend myself. I notice that. See, that's so different. Well, I didn't do that. And you got that wrong. And then you get into, and now we're back and forth yelling at each other. It's you pulling back and going, wow. When you said that, my anxiety just went through the roof. I started saying all those same kinds of things to myself. That I'm no good and I can't do it and I don't, all this. Is I'm noticing. And so that's what this first one is. And this is I think this is almost the hardest one for so many people. Because, and I'm not talking just in addiction, because you'll see I use this stuff when I work with athletes all the time, is that athletes stopping and go, wow, I'm getting really nervous here. I'm nervous. The Super Bowl coming up, I heard somebody say that in their first Super Bowl, the guy said, I don't even know if I breathed the first half. He said, I was just so nervous. And the difference is, wow, I notice I'm nervous. Instead of I'm being nervous, I notice that I'm nervous. I notice that I'm scared. Go ahead.
Unless the person starts obsessing over the thought that they're
We're gonna get into that. Okay? So that's the first thing, the relabel part. Now I'm gonna erase all this so I can write high on the board here. All right. The second part here of this 4-step process, what you do, reattribute. Now before I get to this, let me tell you a couple stories here. Now, when I draw people on the board, a square is a male, a circle is a female. This is called a genogram. This is a kid who I wrote a chapter about in my book. I started seeing him when he was about 17 years old. He was a senior in high school. What's his story? His story was that in middle school, and those of you who've done sports, you know how this is, in especially here, but all over. In middle school, this guy was such a dominant basketball player that he was like the best middle school basketball player in the area. And every high school coach knows who the best middle school players are. All right, this guy was that good. That was him. So, as wrong as this is, but it happens all the time, he got recruited to different high schools. Come to our school, we want you to play for us, all this. So he goes to a school with a great basketball program and all this. And as a freshman, he's so good that he's not only on the varsity team, but he plays a lot on the varsity as a 9th grader. That's how good he is. All right? That was when he was in 9th grade. By the time he came to see me, right in August, right before his senior year, He was probably, you'd think he'd be the best guy on the team by then. He was probably the 7th guy on the team by then. He just was not that good. All right, what had happened in those 3 years? His dad and his coach got together, and they had his future mapped out. He's got to be great in high school. He's going to get a Division I scholarship. He's going to go on to the NBA. For this to happen, they said, we've got to be tough on him. We've got to make him tough. We've got to, and being tough on him, we got to yell at him. We got to point out his mistakes. We got to make him tough. So for 3 years, what happened? Anytime he made any little mistake, they started criticizing him. You always miss free throws when it counts. You never make, always making turnovers, in the clutch. We can't count on you. All this stuff. What happened? This is what I think a lot of us do. He internalized these negative voices. And he started saying that to himself. I suck. I'm no good. I always make mistakes. Now, that was when he played high school. If he went to a playground or a gym and he played against guys who played in college, he could dominate them. He could dominate them. Put him on that high school court with that coach and with dad in the stands, and he froze. And he'd go and he'd make, and you know how fast moving basketball is, he'd make one mistake, and by the time he went down there, he had made 2 more. And then the coach would sit him down to think about it and all this stuff. So what did I do? I got him the first step, number 1. I want you to notice when you're saying these things to yourself. That's number 1. I want you to pull back and notice, wow, I'm saying it. And reattribute is, wait, that's not me, that's my dad's voice. That's not me, that's my coach's voice. Okay? So, and then what we have to do is then, look at, some affirmations, would sound a little corny, but work, building his self-esteem, looking at what he can do on a playground, in a gym, and taking that. And so with him, what happened with him? I started seeing him in August, January, right around now, is when the big statewide high school basketball tournaments are. He still doesn't start, but he's moved up to the 6th guy. He goes to a statewide basketball tournament, and he's named MVP of the whole tournament. All that in a few months. Why? Because he realized, wait, that's not me. That's my parents. That's my coach. Just interesting side note, I told this story months ago. Some guy was sitting right here. He said the exact same thing happened to me, except it was my brother and my coach. And the guy who I was way better than for years went on to play in college, and I didn't, because they nurtured him and they destroyed him. Now, okay, that's this kid. Now, not talking about you here, but here is your dad, and your dad is 12 years old. You're not on this map. Here is your mom, and she's 12 years old. So you're nowhere here. What kind of messages did your dad's parents give him on being a man, loving and nurturing, being a good parent? How did your dad feel about himself when he's 12? How did your mom feel about herself when she was 12? I talk about, it's not like, oh, we're blaming them. I talk about this as a skill set. All right? And here's a perfect example. So Tim's filming today. I have 0 skill set for this. When I was emailing the guy who set this up, I would print it out, I'd show it to Odell, and I'd say, what do I say to him now? He told me to get this, he told me to do that. I don't know what to do. I have no skill set. When you came along all those years later here, what type of skill set did these two have to love and nurture you? You see? What kind of skill set? Because what happens is so often we blame ourselves. It's me, I'm bad, I'm this, I'm that. What I always say, if someone said out loud to us the things we say to ourselves, we'd want to kick their ass. Don't you talk to me like that. Only I can talk to me like that. All right? And where does that come from? Often it comes from we've internalized these messages from our family. And you look at this, so reattribute, you'd say, like, the craving to or urge to use, or the negative self-talk. You'd kind of say, that's not me, that's my addiction talking. Right? That's not me, that's my addiction talking. I don't want to use, my addiction's telling me I can use. I don't want to use, my addiction is telling me it's okay if I still smoke weed because I'm still here on alcohol. I don't want to use, my addiction's telling me I can still drink and I can control my drinking when I leave here. Alright? We need to stop and notice this. And that's the reattribute part of this, where so many people just go, here's what they'll do, they'll blame themselves. And so the example, so when we were down there this weekend, so I'm at Newport, there's this one young girl, she's awesome. She's from the East Coast, and she works there, and she's a student, finishing college and working, and she has a history of eating disorders as well. And so I sat next to her for breakfast, and we're talking, and she said, you really, because I don't eat sugar, I don't eat flour, I really don't take in caffeine at all, maybe a little decaf coffee once in a while. And she's like, you really don't, and I said, no, I don't do that. She used to drink all these Monster drinks and all this stuff. So she has her breakfast, I'm sitting right next to her, obviously I see what she has. Then we have lunch, I notice what she has for lunch, and then we go to dinner, and on the way to dinner she says, what's wrong with me? Why am I hungry? And I said, do I get a vote here? Because you see the difference is, Schwartz will say, you are not your brain. What I kind of talk about is you are not your body either. Why is my body craving food? Well, for her, she had no protein that day. You have no protein, your body's going to crave food. All right? It's not what's wrong with me. Why is my body doing this? Those of you who work out a lot, as I do, I'll like, oh, how's my body today? Well, my body's tired. Not I'm tired, my body's tired. Why is my body tired? Did I go really hard on Monday and Wednesday, and so my Saturday workout, I haven't recovered yet? Did I not sleep as much? Did I not refuel properly? Why is my body tired? Instead of what's wrong with me. And so many people, what they'll do is they blame themselves. And you look at the negative self-talk here. And so, and when I talk about this, and this is where the term brain lock comes from. What Schwartz has shown is that our brain actually gets stuck here. All right? And what does this mean? So this is why I pulled my chair back for this. I told Tim I'd need to sit down here. First 13 years I worked here, I worked in aftercare. Then I'd come here on Thursday nights, and we used to do an aftercare group in this room. I would go to the 4 or 5 different aftercare groups, see what was going on, meet with the counselors before and after. I'd stop by the nurses' station in between to see what the latest drama was, because as you know, there's always drama here. All right? So we would do an aftercare group in here. The facilitator sat right down here. And there was a woman who sat over towards the end there. And if you could hear her thoughts out loud, she was sitting in here going, peanut butter bagel, peanut butter bagel. I gotta go eat a peanut butter bagel. I can't believe it's a hospital, but the peanut butter's pretty good. And the bagels aren't bad. I gotta get a peanut butter bagel. All right? How am I gonna get out of this group? What am I gonna do? Okay, I'll get up. What if they ask me where I'm going? I'll say I'm going to the bathroom. All right, and I'll just go and I'll get a peanut butter bagel and I'll do this. And you can just see, and it's like her brain was just spinning with this. And she'd get up and she'd leave. And I'd walk by the nurse's station. I wish this part was a joke. She had a bagel that had so much peanut butter on it, she couldn't fit it in her mouth. She had to lick the top. All right? She'd eat the peanut butter bagel. She'd come back in here and she'd sit down. And if you could hear her now, she'd be going, why'd I do that? Why did I eat? I'm gonna get fat. Why did I eat that peanut butter bagel? I can't eat breakfast tomorrow. I'm gonna have to work out. Why did I do that? What happens? Group's over. Serenity prayer. She didn't hear one thing. Not one thing. And when I talk about in aftercare, unquestionably, the best shares I ever heard always started with the words, I really don't have much to say tonight. Always. Next time you hear a good share, think back, how did this person start? Because here's what I see constantly. This person sharing, I'm thinking, okay, they're gonna get to me in 3 more, what am I gonna say, how am I gonna say it, I don't wanna sound too funny, I don't wanna sound too, I don't wanna talk too short, I don't wanna talk too long, I don't hear a word she says. She talks, I don't hear anything because I'm in my head. They talk, I don't hear anything. Then I talk, I do my share, and then when he's talking, I'm evaluating my share. Oh my gosh, everybody thinks I'm so bad, they think I'm so stupid, why did I say that, I shouldn't have talked about this, and then same thing, I haven't heard anything. Your brain is gonna lock